nice restaurant here in Prior Lake. It was it's very good. I had a nice New York strip steak, ate half of it, and brought half of it home to my wife Susan, and she got to enjoy it. Plus, I got some chocolate cake. But hey, look, we were talking last night and about what we should talk about, and I think what you were saying we wanted to talk about what, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it'd be cool to talk about we have all these cool guests on, and just to kind of spitball on like other things we want to learn, other people we want to meet, just go from there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think Sam, it's become pretty evident that both you and I enjoy spending our day connecting people, as is evidenced by how we end up spending most of our days. Uh, So yeah, just kind of brainstorming on that and seeing what comes our way, or what we could go find, even between the two of us. So
Yeah, one of the questions I posed when I put the announcement out for the podcast was we always announce it about the day before. We probably need to start announcing. Maybe we put a whole podcast schedule out there, but we always usually put it out the day before. But things you'd want to know about the beverage industry, right? So, not a lot of people played with me, unfortunately, in my post. That's okay. I do have a video I'll show through Vidlo through my friend China. Actually had a question. We can get into that later on. And those of you out there, please join us in the chat. I know there's many of our friends. If you happen to show up or pass by, if there's a question you want to ask Adam and I, would be great. But the one thing that's on my mind is there's this huge white space in front of us right now in the beverage industry where there's brands that need help and there's people that are losing their jobs and
very
there's
good point.
distributors that are meeting their moment in which they're great partners, but they have to make tough decisions, letting go of those people and probably letting go of brands
Mm-hmm.
because there's a shift.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying alcohol is going away, but there is a shift. For more entrance into the category NA products. There's cannabis products we're talking about this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And we just picked up a product in a partnership with New Line. So if Paul Henson's watching this, thank you, Paul, for the opportunity to work with Clarity in Chicago. And we have two of our people actually working in Chicago downtown and one working in the suburbs. And we go live Monday with Clarity, and we couldn't be more excited. But with these changes that are happening, is as a person loses their job at the distributor or a brand loses their position at distributor, both Adam and I exist, to help those brands and those people. And we're not short of brands needing help, but we do need people. And if you're looking, contact Adam or I. We can certainly, put our information. We'd love to help you. Matter of fact, and I'll shut up, Adam, because I'm hogging this whole conversation. But I talked to a new partner that's coming on in Michigan.
Oh, cool.
Actually, she was with Pernod Ricard, and unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
Pernod just went through a reorg this past week and let go of a lot of their folks. And it's funny. We were talking, and she's coming on board starting Monday, representing a little brand called Capali. So if Scott
Cool.
Shaw's listening or Eric Grant, we have Michigan filled. Which is great, right? So, but that, why don't you give kind of your substance? But I think there's a lot to talk about this morning in terms of how brands are changing, people are losing their jobs, are shifting, and there's this a moment in our industry that we should talk about as well.
Yeah, no, I think you. To give everybody some background, so before Sam and I went live here, we were talking about just about being, I hate all these words, consultants, fractional whatevers, right? But service providers in the CPG industry, whatever positive title you want to put on that doesn't have a
Hmm.
negative connotation. And even just within that framework, you very quickly realize like, oh, I'm gonna need more people. Shout out to like my best example for me in recent months is like Nate Call with Qualitas, my quality manager. sat down and had a really nice conversation with him. He's like, dude, within like 6 months of being a consultant on my own, I realized I was going to have to start building a team or turning away business, and those were my options. And
Hmm.
so that's what Sam and I were kind of starting to talk about before we went live. And Sam, I think you bring up a really good point. In addition to that, there must be something in the water, because it wasn't Pinot Ricard for me. It was a good friend of mine who worked at Pabst, just got laid off last week. Um, I mean, I've talked to him. He'd not be offended if I mention his name, but Brad Berg, for anyone that's listening, um, and there's no. Obviously, it's a bummer he got laid off, but there's no hard feelings or anything like that. I mean, it's the business world. Shit happens, but Brad's I'm gonna call it a 30-year veteran of the industry. He's been with Pabst for 10, and now he's got his severance and he's figuring out what's next. And so, um, yeah, like I think
Yeah.
there's this definite. I mean, to your point, right? And I'll stop rambling. I think there's absolutely this thing happening where a lot of these larger companies, because alcohol consumption's on the downswing and they've not yet figured out how to take advantage of that talent and put it in other areas, they're just letting people go. The problem is startups and the entrepreneurs of the world are trying to figure out those other areas, and so it's how do you take that to help this in a timely fashion that doesn't take 6 years, right?
Yeah, it's
So I
it's
think it's definitely
shifting.
something I'm seeing
It's
too.
shifting. It's shifting fast. First of all, sorry to hear about your friend, and we're happy to, after we post this as a podcast, actually put your information out there if you're comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So the woman I was talking about is Jessica Wardrobe, and I hope I pronounced it right, Jessica. But Jessica and I, and I were talking a few weeks ago, and she was smart because she was networking.
Mm-hmm.
And I would encourage everybody, things you'd want to know about the beverage industry. The one thing I'll tell you is network,
Mm-hmm.
because things are changing.
Yeah.
So, just because you have a job today doesn't mean you're going to have a job tomorrow. And the biggest mistake I made a couple years ago is I didn't network. I networked within my company and I felt like I was safe. But I got news for you. The environment is you're just not. And it's no disrespect to the companies, and you're not being disloyal by just picking up the phone. Just pick up the phone and have a conversation. Give Adam a call and see what's out there. Create that side hustle, diversify yourself. That's the one thing I'll tell you about the industry is there's a lot of good people out there. If they reach out and call you, pick up the phone and answer. And don't be afraid to call them. I have friends like Scott Black. Scott, if you're out there watching today, Scott's on a journey, a brilliant marketer, and a great background. Or my friend Ricky Edwards and I, we work together at Breakthrough Beverage Group, and Ricky's on his journey, or Mark Shaker. These are really talented people, and I would just encourage you all, things you want to know about the beverage industry, first of all, pick up the phone, call people, and don't be afraid to ask and accept when they call.
Yeah. I also think there's an interesting dynamic. I think is the word I want to use. There's an interesting dynamic between, because I've had this conversation from both sides of the fence, and so Sam, I'm curious in the maybe the sales and distribution world, what your experience has been, or who you're looking for. Maybe is another part of the question, but like
Yeah.
I talk to some people who are 15, 20, 25 year industry veterans, and they've got that experience, and so they're very clear about, hey, I want to do the strategy, I want to do the planning, I want to do that, but for whatever reason, personal preference, uh, family life, constraints or commitments, whatever it is, they're like, I can't be the person that's doing the planning and also doing the execution, right? And I know I talk to folks on the other side of the fence who are like, hey, I'm maybe a little more green to the industry. I'm a little newer, and I'm really interested and I'm really passionate, and maybe I'm a little bit younger and I don't have as many family commitments and so on. So I'm really, where I can provide the most value is in the execution, but I don't have 3 decades of background to look back on and understand how to do everything for the planning. And I think it's also, it's not just pairing those that were laid off with the brands that need their help, it's pairing executors with strategizers and getting everyone to understand, like, it's okay to not do everything as long as you've got that 1-2 combo, right?
I love that. I'm not sure if there was a question in that
So I
statement,
guess
but
like that's what I'm seeing. I'll put it this way. That's what I'm
yeah,
seeing from the ops side. Like, what are you
yeah.
seeing from the sales side of the world? Like, is it similar?
Yeah, I mean, but I understand kind of where you're going with this. I'm a person and there's a certain thing I want to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I can't do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And things I would tell you, and I tell people that I've talked to lately that have reached out to me that are in the industry that are looking for opportunities is I would tell that person, find that thing that you want to do
Mm-hmm.
and do it well.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point is and especially on the sales and distribution side, it doesn't matter if you're an operator, a marketer, a salesperson, you can fit within what we do at Bev Assets.
Sure.
You just got to tell us what it is you want to do. Like, Adam, you and I play together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We do some stuff with it's Earl Giles, right? It's Earl Giles. Just make sure I get that in my head. It's Earl Giles. But we do some work, with Earl Giles and Ann and Jody and Kevin and Nick. We're getting to know them.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, you're working with them from an operator standpoint, and I'm working with them from a distribution and sales standpoint. But we're both colliding together, to work with those clients. As a matter of fact, the other client that we just picked up through Newline, you were talking about some of their formulation, and you wanted to talk to them. They're using like a coffee with how they
Mm-hmm.
communicate or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
I would think the other thing is the things I would want to know is meet people like Adam. It doesn't have to be Adam. It doesn't have to be me, but if you have a conversation with someone, that might lead to something, a value or something that you do that you have expertise in that you can help them. So remember our friend Brett Johnson?
Yeah.
So, Brett, I don't know if you're out there from Beyond Spirits, and then Brett has his own business, and he connected us with Mex Direct. Here's a real life situation, things you want to know. First thing is, again, I'm going to say network. But Brett and I got on a call with Adam and Alicia, and we met Phil. And and Phil met me with his partner Jorge. I think it was George, or they go by Jorge. But they basically work with tequilas and stuff in Mexico. Well, kind of fast forward, I was at Earl Giles with Ann, visiting with her and my wife Susan. She was in town because our friend Marius was in town. So we had some pizza over there. Great, best pizza in the northeast, by the way. If you want to go get a good pizza at Earl Giles, really good. Oven heated. That's a little advertisement for them. But my point is, she was saying, hey, we have this problem with getting tequila.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have this, it's been holed up on the border. It's coming in a tote. And we've been working with Tequila Bob. Sorry,
Right.
Tequila Bob, but anyway, Tequila Bob is not able to get the tote over the border, and I'm not trying to take business away from Tequila Bob, so let's just be clear. But I'm like, look, literally 2 days ago, I just met Phil,
Mm-hmm.
right? Things you want to know about the beverage industry. I met Phil. Phil actually owns Mex Direct. I hope I'm getting this right. But I met Phil through Brett. Brett was connecting me through Adam, right? This is how the network works, right? But anyway, I connected Phil and Jorge to Ann and Jody. Ann and Jody connected them to Nick and Kevin, and they're trying to figure out how to get a freaking bloody tote of tequila. And I think they even had a deeper discussion to have even more type of businesses they're going to do. I mean, they're talking about like RTDs in California, small runs, the whole bit. So you got to get in on this as well. I think you were copied on the communications. But my point is things that you want to know about the beverage industry is meet people and then tell them what you do, and then when you're not in the room, someone like me is going to mention you to them, and I'm going to introduce you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we've talked about it before, and I won't beat a dead horse too badly here, but I think if anyone's picked up anything from all these podcasts that you've done, Sam, and the ones I've been a part of, it's that if you get known for, it's one thing to be known for doing good work, and you absolutely should, for sure. You should, if you want to work in any industry for any length of time, like, obviously being known for doing work, the work itself well is obviously a good thing. Nothing earth shattering there. But I think what people forget about is the value in being known as being the person to call, right? Being known for, hey, Sam might not have the answer, but Sam knows who can help me find it, right? Sam might not even know who can help me find it, but Sam can give me the number of somebody who can, right? Because at that point, you're a part of the conversation. And at the end of the day, like that's where business is going to come from. That's where new opportunities are going to come from. Because to his point, like somebody's either going to remember you, and be like, oh, they helped me out on this one. I wonder if they could help me out on this next one, right? Or like, you know, I don't know if they could help, but at the very least, they'll hear the question, and maybe they'll give us some feedback we hadn't thought about.
Right, exactly. I mean, I remember a couple years ago, I was working with Finnegan's, with a brand called Hairless Dog.
Sure.
And Hairless Dog was going through some formulate. We were trying to reformulate. Well, the first
Mhm.
person I called was you, because I knew you looked at BevSource, you're part of the lab, and I'm like, we're trying to formulate. This is what's in it, and you connected me up with some company in Canada.
Mhm.
The other
Mhm.
thing is we were looking, I think then kind of fast forward like a year later, I was looking for a co-packer. Who did I
Mhm.
call? I called you because I knew you had access to those co-packers. So things you'd want to know about the industry is find those people that have the knowledge or the connection to go help you with your brand or your journey. Don't try to do it yourself. I see so many people, they like, I'm bootstrapping. We just said earlier, I'm in charge of marketing. I'm doing bookkeeping. I'm doing the selling. You got to step back, get the right resources in, the right people around you. It's a competitive business and it moves really fast. It moves really
Yeah.
fast. So if you don't have those people around you, the whole bit. So we got a couple of people coming in, by the way. I just want to call out
Yeah.
Robert Kogan. Robert, how you doing, man? If you want to pop in, I'd love to have a conversation with you. We have Mason has popped in as well. So just he said, "Good morning, guys," and so Robert says, "I do borders." I'm not sure what Robert's saying. Maybe he wants to expand. I do borders,
Yeah,
but
I'm wondering. I'm pulling up his LinkedIn as I talk. I'm wondering
he
if
does.
we
He does. If you want to get something into Canada, give Robert a call.
like
Okay.
brokerage. Yeah, yeah, yeah. International brokerage.
Yeah. So he knows everything about getting a product across the border. I believe Robert, you're up in the kind of the Michigan area, I believe, or up across the border into Canada. But thanks for joining us today, guys. I really appreciate it. Bring on your questions. We'd love you to participate because what things don't you know about the beverage industry you'd want to know? Have you ever followed Brian Rosen from InvestBev?
Rosen. The name sounds familiar, but that could just be because you've mentioned it before. Let me
Yeah,
see.
so Brian, if you happen to catch this, great. But Brian is very vocal about what's happening in the business. And Brian, I hope I get it right, but he was just at CB, what's it called, Covenant, Bar Covenant, Brooklyn.
Oh, the
So
yeah, yeah, the bartenders event.
yeah,
Yep.
and then he stayed over, and he speaks at least like and Bavnet, and goes to a lot of conferences. Seen as a thought leader in the category. Certainly appreciate him, but he's been talking about these brands, and he talks about COVID, and talked about like how COVID actually, even though it took place a long time ago, when COVID happened, distributors pulled their sales forces back, but they also created a lot of technology to actually go out and do those orders. So they were getting a lot of volume, but they didn't have to put a lot of players out in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happened now? So all that volume is they're trying to meet it, and they're not. So you're seeing this retraction, right? And what
Mm-hmm.
Brian says is small brands need to put their own people in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
They do. And I really appreciate
Totally.
that, Brian says that because that's where we can certainly help is if you're a brand and you're inside a wholesaler, you need to make sure that you have a person in that marketplace that is advocating for your brand in the stores and the bars, the restaurants, whatever it may be. That's one
Totally.
thing that is a brands of, and it's still important to invest in your tastings and promotions,
Mm-hmm.
but you also need to take a shift and not only do tastings and promotions with your tasting companies, you need to put feet on the street, boots on the ground to go build your business. So from a distribution and sales standpoint, I would convey that. That's one thing I'm seeing is if you're a brand that's trying to, I guess, like a startup brand, or you're kind of you're kind of still in that building phase, you're not quite scaling yet. You can't hire a full-time sales force, but you can hire someone like us to give you an opportunity. Look, BuzzBalls was there. uh, Tito's was even there. I was the guy that said no to both. I always say this on the screen. I said no to both, but they had to invest feet on the street. From an operations standpoint, what are you saying? You seeing some of the same things, some fractional work, or people coming in to help these brands?
Yes, I think two really quick stories, and I'll answer your question. I'm going to give you the same one back. So, you talk about the amount of time and having people from the brand side and stuff. So this is two separate brands, but I'm going to kind of smash it all together into one story. So one gentleman that Ryan Halliman, who's been on the show before, and I talked to recently, he's got a brand he was starting, and it doesn't really matter what it was. Not that it was a bad idea, but it was very much in my world, ready to drink beverage, right? And he's telling us about it, and some beverages are easier than others, some are a little more complex, but we're talking to him, and he's like, yeah, so I'm just gonna handle everything by myself for now, and so like if I could just have like a consulting call from time to time with you guys to make sure I'm on the right track, and which is fine, by the way. Like, I have other people that I do that with. There's nothing wrong with that. But we've been talking to this gentleman a couple times, and I said, hey, didn't you tell me your wife's pregnant? And he goes, yeah, why? I'm like, when's she due? And he goes, oh, in like 2 weeks. Why? Like, in what world do you think you're gonna have time to work your day job, support your wife, support your child, and start a brand, right? And he just looked at me. Now, again, I don't have kids, and this is his first, but I know I have enough friends with kids. He just looked at me. He goes, "Well, it's gonna be fine. Like, I've got. It's not a big deal." I'm like, "Okay, right?" Different brand owner was telling me that his mom had gone, because he's younger kid, lives at home saving some money, which God bless. I did the same thing in my early to mid 20s. He was like, yeah, mom was out at the grocery store the other day, and she stopped one of the managers and was talking to him and asked him why they didn't carry my product. I'm like, does mom need a job? Because she's your new salesperson, right? And he was laughing. He's like, yeah, I know. It's kind of funny of her to just go randomly talk to the store manager. And I was like, no, I'm being serious. Does mom want a job? Because you should pay her to do that, right? Just to be out talking to retailers and places on behalf of you. So to answer your question, yes, I'm seeing similar things. And I think for me, it's, even though we aren't, kind of feet on the street in terms of being out in the world as the operations team, um, it's still very much day-to-day execution, right? And as somebody who, I will gladly raise my hand and get into a spreadsheet, right? Like, I will day-to-day execute. It's what I like doing. It's what I enjoy. I will also help with planning and strategy. Pretty thoroughly, I think, especially for early stage brands. But when you talk about, being able to help more businesses, I mean, there was a gentleman I used to work with at BevStores who got also laid off from either Medtronic or 3M or one of those the other day here in Minnesota. And I reached out to him and just said, hey man, like, we've had some other friends get laid off in the IT world, and like, I don't really, do as much obviously with IT. I introduced them to people. I helped where I could, but I said, hey, like, if you're willing to jump back into CPG and you're willing to do day-to-day execution, like, I might have work for you, right?
Yeah.
And so the question I have for you is, when you specific to like feet on the street, who are you looking for? Like, are you looking for somebody that can, dedicate 40 hours a week to going out and running around and talking to people? Are you looking for somebody that's got 2 hours free every Saturday? Like, because I mean, who knows? Between people that are listening, my network, your network, like,
Yeah.
depending on who that is, like, we may have people that we could send your way.
Yeah, so the ideal candidate for us is probably someone that's actually been in the industry. We always ask them, what is your real estate? So
Okay.
what we mean by that is, who do you have relationships with? So
Sure.
that's the first question we ask. So who do you know, right?
Sure.
So they know customers. I've called on Walmart, Bevmo, Safeway, Specs. I've worked inside distribution. I know Southern Glacier Wine and Spirits Maverick. I know Charlie over at Winebow. I can have a conversation, with Shirley at the bar at the tavern. So that's the first question we ask is, what's your real estate?
Sure.
So
Okay.
the second part, are you willing to go out in the wild? Okay, and what I mean by that is the day, and Alicia, if you're out there, bless you, by the way. I know you've had a difficult week. Prayers to you and your family, and bless Benny, your fur baby. He's in a great spot. But so Alicia always says that the salesman of yesterday used to be able to sit behind their computer. I'm wordsmithing this, Alicia. Sorry, but sit behind their computer and just basically count on the distributor to go do it. They no longer can do that. They got to put the bottles in their bags.
Hmm.
And what I mean by bottles in the bags is you got to put that bottle in your bag. You got to put it in the back of your car. You got to start that car up, and you got to go out in the wild, and you got to go talk to people. So that's the second qualification. If you're willing to go talk to people, want to go out in the wild, great. The third thing is you got to communicate.
Sure.
So with us, we actually use a software called Pinata.
Hmm.
Hello, Ian and company. I always love to call you guys out, and they've been so gracious to help us set up our SaaS system, our CRM system. So if you're willing to communicate to us, because we try to work in spreadsheets, emails, text messages, and phone calls. It doesn't work. So if you're willing to communicate like some of an app and say, hey, look, I've called on Shirley at the bar, or Betty at the bar, and tell us what happened in terms of your activity. Did I get a pod, a display, a menu, and sell a case?
Yeah.
And you're willing to go do that and communicate with us? That's the third qualifying question. And then fourth is, do you fit well with our culture? So we discover that pretty quick, right? So we choose to work with people that are just people. I'm going to say it. We don't like to work with assholes.
No,
So we,
absolutely. For
yeah,
sure.
So
Say it
we,
twice. Yeah.
right. So we get to choose that. So we will identify that pretty quickly, and it's just form and fit at the end of the day, and not everybody is a fit for everywhere, but we certainly will here to help. I mean, our whys, and I'm sorry to go, and I'm going to ask you the same question,
No, please.
but things you'd want to know about the beverage industry is our whys is basically to help people find work and do right by brands
Hmm.
at the end of the day. And so don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call us. Then look, this is not a commercial. We sincerely want to help, and if it's not us, we can help you find someone else. Like my friends on the line here, we got Mason, we got Robert. Hey Eric, I see you just joined. I appreciate you, man. He said, bro, when you go into mode, I don't know what that means, but I guess I'm in a mode. Eric, hey, pop in, Eric. You might have the link, or I can send it to you. But yeah. So what about you? What are you thinking?
So it's similar, but it's different. I'm really glad you ran through like the stuff you're looking for, because it lets me, again, even just in my own Rolodex, kind of think through, if I hear of anybody that, unfortunately gets laid off, or if I know of anyone that kind of fits that mold. Um, yeah, I mean, from an operations perspective, and Halleman, if you're listening, chime in. I know it's Father's Day and you've got a family, but, or Father's Day weekend.
Yeah, we tend to milk it when we're fathers. By the way, we'll milk it for a couple weeks.
Right, right, exactly. Right. No, I mean, so I think from an operations perspective, like the for me, for the groups I'm looking to help, the bar is a little bit, I'm gonna say lower, but I just mean in terms of your experience or your relationships. So for example, like, we haven't had him on the show, but I think I've mentioned it before. Buddy of mine, Steve Canlin. So Steve, shout out if you're listening. Um, he knows Nate. Steve and I met several years ago. He had his own craft soda brand. He was doing it out of a commercial kitchen, like very much living that startup beverage entrepreneur life. We met when I was at the lab, and Steve and I worked together at Illicit. We were able to work together there, and so like Steve's one of those people who has had a lot of really great life experiences. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy speaks French. He's traveled the world, moved from Utah to Vermont. So it has the ability to network, can connect with people. But, I always tell him, and he's asked me this, he doesn't have the reps, right, with everything. He's not done, certain planning things thousands of times over, right?
Yeah.
But, and this is where I say the bar is lower, that's okay. Like, he gets it. He understands the logic. He understands the reasons for doing things in a certain way. He's hungry to learn. And for me, that's where my threshold is. I'm like, if you check those boxes, and sitting down and planning a production, putting together a cost of goods analysis, looking at, even very basic distributor margins just to help paint a picture from your cost of goods up to your shelf price. Like if all that stuff interests you and you check those boxes on just being eager to learn, being able to work with numbers, being willing to kind of get your ass kicked until you figure it out, like I could use the help, right?
It's funny. It's funny you say that because we just hired a bookkeeper. We did because
Right.
Alicia was stuck in the mud trying to figure out the books, and we need
Yeah.
Alicia out of the books,
Yeah. Totally.
helping us, strategically with our partners, and but trying to, handle the books is not her forte or mine. Sorry, Alicia. I want to call a couple people out. First of all, Eric, thanks
Yeah.
for the shout out. So Eric Martindale, just to let you know, talk about like people in the industry. I just want to talk about a
Hmm.
couple people here in terms of things that you would want to know about the beverage industry. It's not all about operations. It's not all about selling to distributors and customers. Eric Martindale, and Eric, I hope I get this right, but I'm gonna call it out. So Eric will actually, when a brand goes into the store, and he's like this e-commerce expert, he actually ensures that that product gets pulled out of the store, and he will use things like Uber Eats and DoorDash, and he'll drive those drivers into those locations. Now, why is that important? Because if you don't get the velocity and you don't get the movement, you're not going to be in that shelf very long. So Eric actually plays a very critical part in that. Jim Harris, I want to call Jim Harris out. Jim Harris, actually, it says he works with his brother Tom. So Jim is actually Western Computer, Jim, I believe, but they do a lot of things to help out. But his brother Tom actually has a software called Ruby Pro Solutions,
Ruby
which is
Pro. Hmm.
Ruby Pro, and I think Adam. Yeah, you've already they reached out to you. Hey man, hey Adam's my referral man. Don't forget about that guy. Anyway, sorry, but anyway, so Tom has developed this software, right? So you don't have to be a salesperson. You don't have to be an operations person. Within our industry, there's all kinds of things you can do because there's a need. We always say, like at Bev Assets, we're like, look, Alicia and I do two things very, very important. We do sales and distribution, but if you need operations, meet Adam. If you need to actually activate that item to get the Uber driver to show up, please meet our friend Eric Martindale. If you need help with pricing, go meet Tom Harris. Because there's different things in the industry that you can do. And by the way, just because you were in operations before doesn't mean that you can't be in sales. Be willing to
Hmm.
reinvent yourself because you're going to have to. The industry's changing really fast.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's another, that's another really good call out, and it kind of, it's a good bridge into one of the other things that you and I talked about maybe going over today is like, I know I've mentioned it before here, I've mentioned it before elsewhere, like some of the best salespeople I know, and I'm not saying it's a precursor to being a good salesperson, but some of the best salespeople I know were teachers in a past life, right? Um, or like,
Uh,
you know,
they're
the
great insurance salespeople, by the way.
right. Well, or like who was I talking to somebody the other day, and they said something about, um, if you're going to be a CEO, like you kind of have to be able to truly wear multiple hats, right? Like you've obviously got to balance, growing sales with doing things in an operationally efficient way. So it helps to have multiple backgrounds, is what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah.
And so, the question Sam and I got to talking about, and I'll ask you first, Sam, is like for you specifically, right? And I always applaud you when I'm talking to you, talking about you to other people about your willingness to try new technology, right? It's like
Yeah.
Riverside, Vidlo. I mean, you're working with Pinata, right? I truly like it's commendable because not everybody does that at any
Yeah.
age, right? At any experience level. What do you want to learn? Like, what do you, even if it's not something that you're going to spend your time doing, like, what are the other either areas of the business or people or businesses? Like, what are the things that Sam, if he had free hours in a day, he doesn't, but let's say you did, right? What do you want to learn?
The big thing for me, and I probably got this from Ian over at Pinata and Fred to call them out, because I've got the opportunity to actually, be part of their team to, you know, be SaaS sell, so to speak,
Mhm.
software as a service type of selling, right? And it's all about solution based. For me, is I want to be able to learn how to become more efficient and effective.
Mm,
And if
sure.
I can find a piece of software to actually do that,
Hmm.
then that just makes my life easier and the people around me easier. That's number one.
Sure.
And then two is I want to be able to have a solution like at my fingertips
Hmm.
that can actually help solve a person's problem. It might be my friend Jay Williams. Hello, Jay. I just saw you pop up on my screen. A good salesperson is usually just a real person.
What a
And our
wonderfully simple and accurate statement.
yeah, I'm sorry to stop cold turkey, but that is so important, that statement. And if you don't
Hmm.
follow Jay Williams, he has a great brand called Freebird. I always think about my one of my favorite bands, Leonard Skinner. Sorry, Jay, but I will play Leonard Skinner, Freebird, and actually gladly drink Freebird all day long. So that's my advertisement for Freebird. But Jay's a real down to earth, like tells stories, and people really relate to him. And I mean, so how I like to take data, going back into the conversation, weave it back in. The reason I use technology is if it can help me tell a better story,
Oh, totally.
right? Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and that and somehow if Jay says I got a problem, then I can come tell a story with my data or my technology. Then man, that's gonna help that person move forward. So that's why I'm into all this technology. It's really to help like my friends out there, Eric and Jay and Robert and Jim. Thanks everybody. I mean, truly blessings for you to join us today, because what we're talking about is things you'd want to know about the beverage industry. We're just trying to be real here this morning. Like,
Hmm.
and we both, Adam, you've been on a journey, man. So tell us what you've learned on your journey. Like, you were a big vice president, running North America, and you lost your role, man. What have you since then? What have you learned about the beverage industry from going to BevSource? You got this big role, and now you're like this just this your own man now, your own business.
God, what a phenomenal question, and thank you for asking it. And I wish I had a really cool, like, insightful, answer teed up. But this is going to be a broken ramble at best. Um, yeah, I mean, it's. I don't know, man. I guess I guess I'm still figuring out what I've learned from this, but the experience has been, and I've made this comment to several people, um, getting used to the whiplash, right? And what I mean, and I mean that in a very positive way, but what I mean is this. So, like, in any given day, whether it's a client or a friend or you or whoever, like, in any given day, I will talk to, for example, last week. So I will talk to an MBA student who is telling me that they have an idea for a beverage, but they need to get it made in 8 weeks because it has to be done as part of their MBA program. I'm like, well, we should have started talking 4 months ago, right? Um, so I'll go from that to a friend who's like, hey, I'm having this issue at production. Have you ever seen this before? And I'm not doing work. It's not scope. They're just calling me. They're like, hey, this is new to me. Have you seen it? Or like Fido at the lab will call
Yeah.
me and say, hey, have you worked with this group or hey, do you remember where this was saved? All the way to, you know, larger groups that I'll work with from time to time who have their own problems. And so it's
Yeah.
whiplash of like all these little eccentricities and uniquenesses and business sizes and personality types. And I get to the end of my day and like it's so, I love what I do and it fills my cup, but it's also where I go, I'm a little fried because of just trying to upscale or downscale what I'm saying based on who's understanding it,
So would it be
right?
true that you went from structure to chaos?
you know, yes, but also like uh, but also I went from chaos to structure, right? So like,
Yeah.
two things can be true. So like in terms of structure to chaos, I went from having one brand and a handful of SKUs to having several brands and several SKUs and several personality types and several brand sizes. So that's the, leaning into chaos. But I also went from chaos to structure wherein, the brand that I was at and I'm, not speaking ill of them, it just was like they were a startup functional beverage brand who wasn't really sure who they wanted to be. And that was part of the reason that the kind of mile wide and inch deep scenario ended up happening is they were trying to be everything to everyone. So that was chaos.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I'm very explicit with people. Here's how I work. Here's the rules that I will and won't bend. For example, like quality. It's not a discussion. Here's the way we do things. Here's the processes you have to follow. I will introduce you to a process authority. If you don't want to do that, best of luck, and I will talk to you later. Right?
Yeah.
So
I
it's
love it.
it's moved into structure in that sense. And so to answer your question in terms of like what I've learned, I guess it'd be just getting comfortable with that. If that's a learning.
Well, I've
Yeah.
definitely seen your growth. I'm sure you've seen
Thank
mine
you.
too,
Yeah, totally.
especially with all the experts, and many of them are on the line today. So thank you everybody for joining. I actually wanted to call it a beautiful friend, Anna Adams. She actually says, lean into tech as a tool and into the person for building relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You
Totally.
know, that's
Totally.
that's so awesome. And Jay, I will be playing Leonard Skinner later on. I'll probably just call you out of the blue, and you don't have to answer, but I'm gonna leave you a message. And Eric Martindale, I'm gonna call you today. I promise you. I have a question about teas. But no, that's I've seen you grow so much, and I love it how
Oh,
you
thank you.
said that. I'm like you're going into chaos. You're like, no, I actually have found structure, and what I do, and
Mm-hmm.
and the statement that you said, Adam, which I think is really cool, is you're not scared to say who you are and what you're willing to do and not do. So when that brand founder or that brand comes to you, say, look, if you're not about quality, I'm probably not the right stop for you.
Totally. Yep.
And
Yep.
I'm learning that from my partner Alicia. Like, look, we this is what we do. These are the costs of our services, and we're not going to work below our privileges. She did a post about
Mm-hmm.
it the other day, by the way, if you saw that. But all those people out there, you never have to work below your privileges. Jay, Eric, Anna, you know, who am I missing here? Robert, Mason, all of you. You are so worth it, and the services that you bring to people,
Mm-hmm.
um, just know that you're worth it and don't work below your privileges. If there's things you want to know about beverage industry, I did want to transition with the last. We have what 15 minutes or so,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted to actually I put it out there, and all of you on the line. I was begging you to do a video on Vidlo. I guess everybody's camera shy here. I really just wanted to show some questions out there. So I'm trying to figure out the use case for Vidlo. They work with Missy Elliott. I talked to China yesterday. She's absolutely brilliant. So actually, China has a question. So I'm going to attempt to actually bring on her question, Adam.
Okay.
And then I'm going to let
Yeah.
you answer it, the question, but I'm going to try to share the screen. So maybe while I'm sharing the screen and trying to figure out, maybe you can share, like a point of view on something you're seeing and operationally in the business in terms of what a brand should prepare for. But I'm going to pull up her in a second.
Sure. Um, yeah, a really good example from this week in terms of like things a brand should prepare for, and I refer to it as like stacking up the dominoes. So doing what I do operationally, a lot of the folks I work with get real excited about, well, how quick can I get to production? How quick can I get to production? I'm like, we will get to production. It will happen. What you need to understand is once that happens, it's going to go so fast and you're going to run out of time. So the point I try to make with people is plan as much of your sales conversations or have as many of those conversations, plan as much around your numbers, your margins, get all of that prepared now because once you have product, then the race begins and you better fucking run, right? Um, and so I think it lands with people, but I guess that would be my operations way of pitching other services is to tell people like, hey, while you have time to plan and strategize, for the love of God, please do so.
That's great feedback. Jay says, love that. Doing things the right way really matters. Anna says, and then basically says, thanks for your support. So I'm gonna actually show. So the person on the left, we asked a question today about things you'd want to know about the beverage industry, and look, I'm gonna leave this open. So friends out there, please share your videos with us. But I'm gonna actually, can everybody see this? Can you see the screen, Adam?
Yeah, totally.
What I would love to know about the beverage industry is how do I start my own beverage company? Like, what would be the first steps I would have to take in order to start my own beverage? Let me know.
All right,
I
Adam.
just want to give her a hug. She just seems, I don't know, she just seems very like bubbly and positive.
Oh, you need to meet China. So China actually works with Missy Elliott, several CPG
mm,
brands. So they, it's really interesting. So I'll be introducing her to many of my friends. So all you that are on here today, please meet China Morgan. She's absolutely brilliant, and she was on the podcast. But Adam, why don't you take that question? Like that's a
yeah,
big
I mean,
question because there's so many people who want to do this.
it's such a big question. I think, God, I'll try and stick somewhat operational with my answer. I'll stay in my own sandbox. The-
Well, it
One of the
starts with
big
you,
things,
right? Everything that question, the starting point. You are the starting point.
you know, I am and I'm not, right? So like the technical answer to that question is, and I have this conversation, I've had it so many times over the years, I still have it, of getting people to understand the difference between a commercial formula and like what I refer to as a kitchen recipe, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with a kitchen recipe. A lot of amazing brands have started their journey or their story with a kitchen recipe. Um, I talked to a gentleman the other day who was like, "Yeah, I'm making the extracts in my house, and I want to continue doing that as I scale my business." And I went, "Absolutely fucking not, right?" Um, just from a quality perspective, from a safety perspective. And so, the very technical operations answer is, okay, well, you need a formula. You need a very clear instruction on these materials, these usage rates, these specs, these blend instructions, this preservation method, so on and so forth. But when you say it starts with ops, as the ops guy, I would actually argue it starts a little bit before that with who do you want to be as a brand and who do you not want to be, or what do you want your brand to be and what do you not want it to be, right? We talk all the time and everybody said, like, if you're a product for everyone, you're a product for no one, right? So when people ask, well, how do I get started? I think the first is do your homework, right? Like find your footing, figure out what you are and what you aren't. And then step 2 or step 1A, get a commercial formula, and then things can start to flow from there, right? Um, but I talked to a gentleman the other day who I've started asking people a lot sooner. I've always asked this question, but I start asking it almost immediately. What's your budget for this project as a whole? Not for me. What's your budget for this project as a whole right now?
Yeah.
And how long do you think it's going to take? And what is that expectation based on? Right?
I love that. I love that.
And it starts a really good conversation because, for example, I had a gentleman the other day who said, well, I've got about 40 grand and I imagine it'll take about 8 to 10 months. And I went, fucking perfect. Like 40 grand is not going to sustain you for anything more than the next 6, 8 months, but you can get to a production with, depending on what you're making, depending on the quality parameters.
Really?
Like,
Well, you and I need to talk because we got a brand called Naventus. We probably maybe stay on the line a little longer, but we got
Sure.
about 150 grand. We're all going to put 10 grand in a piece. By the way, all of you can join on the line if you want to join us on Naventus. Yeah, we're trying to raise cash. So yeah, there's a lot. I love that. That none of the answers China's total question, but this is the start, right? Like, okay, what's your budget? It's 40 grand. That's brilliant because yeah, that sustains you. There's a starting point.
Well, there's a starting point, and like, the reason I ask, and it's again, it's well, how do I start a brand? Well, okay, if you tell me you have 5 grand, that's a different answer than if you tell me you have 40 grand. It's a different answer if you tell me if you have $500,000.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the answer to
then,
the question, is you have a plan. You need a plan, and you need to be willing to finance that plan, and you need to be committed to the plan. Is what I think I hear you saying.
totally.
Yeah. Hey, let me transition. There's a couple questions coming in because I've been pressing, so
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to lose this. So Jay says at Freebird, we are just now in rapid expansion. So he's actually in probably the scale-up phase. He's moved really quick, by the way. I mean, it's amazing. I've been following this journey. Your comments about planning and being prepared for that next step is crucial. So many layers. You want to expand on that a little bit? Kind of ties back what we were just talking about just now, and then what Jay shares.
Hold on. So Jay just said, here's a question. If you were lucky enough to start off with a successful trajectory, when do you take the leap into big retailers, the big boys versus holding back? Fucking love it, Jay. I think that, I mean, that speaks to his previous comments. Like, I won't name him because, not because there's anything wrong, but just because he's still getting it figured out. And yeah. So I work with a brand right now, younger gentleman, I think he's 26, 27, single SKU, ready to drink beverage, and he's kind of self-distributing in his home market. He made like 1,000 gallons of product, and he's getting it out to C-stores and gyms and just self-distributing and keeping it very, kind of grassroots, which I applaud,
Yeah.
right? But I've told him, things like the simple things to consider of like, hey, don't price it like you're self-distributing, price it like you're working through a distributor so that when you need to work with a distributor, you've got that middle ground built in.
I
right?
learned that lesson the other day, by the way. We were doing pass-through distributors,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden we had to go from 20% to 30%. And so I'm
Mhm.
talking to the founder. I'm like, you know what? We need to base our pricing on 3-tier, and that's how
Mhm.
we need to go to market.
Mhm.
So I'm like, even though you're getting the savings of 10%, always price it like the I guess the worst case scenario.
Yep. And so we had that conversation, I want to say, I don't know, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and this gentleman goes, hey, so I got introduced to somebody at Costco. And I went, oh, fuck, here we go. Right. And he's like, so I know, like, I only have 1,000 gallons of product. I'm not ready to support Costco sized business. Like, should I just tell him no? And I was like, oh, God, no. Do not tell, no, 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 no. Have the conversation. And you could see the look in his eyes. He was like, the gears were turning. He was confused. And he's like, well, if I'm not prepared for them, like, why would I? And I was like, look, man, I'm not telling you to say yes. I'm telling you to have the conversation and understand what they're looking for. Because the answer is you are flat ass not
So
fucking
this
ready.
kind of ties into Jay's question that just came across.
Mhm.
Let's just stick with
Yeah.
this. He said, so if you're with me and you can keep on taking it,
Yeah.
here's a question. If you're lucky enough to start off with a successful trajectory, which it sounds like, Jay, you're just like crushing it out there. Love to know your velocity and reorder rates, by the way, and your contribution. When do you take that leap into big retailers, the big boys, versus holding back? And we're talking about Costco right now. So what does that look like?
Yeah. So from an ops answer, right? And I'll get to Jay's question very, very specifically. To me, it looks like a few things. A, that you have enough capital to sustain you through those size of productions, right? And I don't know, this is actually something I want to get deeper with because of what I just said in this conversation, is how Costco typically structures their payment terms for new brands, right? I don't know if it's, 2% net 15, net 30, net 90, I don't know, right? But I think first thing is just doing the math on how much product they're going to want, setting a cash schedule for those productions, and then multiplying that by 3 or 4 or 5 productions and looking at what that big ass number is.
Well, yeah, and
Right.
plus, if they come knocking on the door and they want the product, it better be ready because the fulfillment rate's probably plus 95%. So,
Right.
Jay, if you want to go play with the big boys and you go get into Walmart, when Walmart wants their order, you better be ready to fill the order. And I was on a brand that was Total Wine Direct, nationwide, 38 states in Bevmo. And guess what happened is when they came knocking, they couldn't fill the order. Like, well, I only got 2 flavors available, but the next 2 will be available 2 weeks from now, or come back in 4 weeks. And I got a story for you. So if you're right, your point is you got to have the cash on hand, the capital to actually make the product, and you got to be able to do a good, really SNOP. I guess it is good forecasting in
Mhm.
place and
Mhm.
processes to fill it. So
Yeah, I think
I
the
don't know
other
the answer.
thing,
So if you want to get to this question specifically, I mean, maybe I have a
yeah,
thought.
yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, my only other couple comments, and it's funny, Robert said, Jay, go to Canada. Uh, my
He's
only,
probably
I,
like, "Hey Jay, I can get you in Canada. Come on, let's go. I'll
right.
get you in, ready to roll."
I think the other two big things I would say, so it's yes, forecast and make sure that you've got the budget for it. Um, the boots on the ground piece that Jay just asked, I'll turn it over to you in a second, Sam. But the other
Yeah.
two things I would say is, Target, Costco, Walmart, I mean, a lot of these retailers have very extensive, as well they should, I applaud them for it, but they have very extensive um, quality requirements, right?
Yeah.
So like, do you have a recall plan? Do you have do you have all of your FSMA documentation laid out? Food Safety Modernization Act, right? And those are big lifts for a lot of new brands because they've never done it before. So I think getting those things done as a small brand first before you start those conversations, as opposed to trying to do it after.
Yeah.
Um, and then just understanding, their to your point, and this will be the bridge between you and I, understanding their like load-in requirements. How do things have
Yeah.
to be labeled? How do they have to be marked? What kind of support do they expect from you as the brand in those large retailers? And I
Yeah.
think that's where you can answer your side of the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you're like have the cost operation, they make the product and you get in distribution. And Jay, you're asking about like boots in the ground. If we look at markets, and markets Tampa, Miami, St. Pete, Jacksonville, New York, depending where you want to win and depending where that retailer is or that distributor is where you would probably want to put your boots on the ground to get where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, right? You want to get that push versus the pull. You want that boot on the ground to actually go into those accounts to actually activate that brand. So that's basically where you're going to be is going to determine where your boots on the ground is. But it's a little bit of timing. How we set up, we don't like, even though we're nationwide, most brands don't come to us nationwide. They're like, hey, I'm going to be, I'm going to start in Florida, Georgia, Missouri, and Colorado. Or another brand's like, I'm going to be in Massachusetts, New York, Kentucky, and Ohio. I mean, that's kind of how we roll in terms of that information. I'm seeing if there's any other questions out there. Do you see any more out there? Let's see here.
No questions. I think everybody's getting to the point where they got to bounce for the day. They're saying their goodbyes in the chat, which is wonderful. I love that
Yeah.
the podcast has enough of a community that everyone's like, "See you next week, guys."
And by the way, this thanks everybody, all my friends out there that did take the time today to join us. And it's funny, I go back and listen to these podcasts. I'm sure I'm going to go for a walk here shortly, and I'm going to listen to this, and there's something I'm going to learn for sure. But I wanted to have you finish your thought on this. I don't know if you got the total thought out, and then we can wrap up.
No, I mean, you mean on Jay's question?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the only other comment I would have, and it echoes what you said, is Whole Foods, Walmart, whoever it is, or even on the distribution side, KeHE, UNFI, which we know has been having a bad day lately, is just to understand, and this is where ops and sales blend, right? Like,
Yeah.
be very focused in your, again, mile deep, inch wide, right? So like if you want to go with a Walmart or a Whole Foods, probably don't agree to every store in 6 states, right?
Yeah.
And if that's the only offer, maybe don't accept that offer until you know for damn sure you can support every store in 6 states.
Yeah.
But if they say, well, hey, how about, a 10-store test in this part of Colorado? Wonderful. That I can manage. Right?
Yeah, and careful what you wish for. There's like these incubator programs, and I'm not saying that really we have an incubator program, but they'll like, hey, I'm in the 90-day program at Sprouts.
Yep.
Make sure if you're in that 90-day program for Sprouts, is that every one of those stores has the pull through because they're going to measure that. Because once that 90 days is over, you're either in or you're out.
Totally. Yep.
So make sure that there's the pull through. Make sure that KeHE is making the delivery to those stores, and UNFI, I'm not sure who delivers those stores, but I've heard that too. Someone told me like, hey, sometimes they miss their distribution, like they don't get to the stores. It might be like a case or two that's going to those stores. So it's all make sure it gets in within the time frame in which you're being measured. Well, this is a great conversation, brother. I mean, it's funny. We were talking last night what we wanted to talk about. It's probably one of our better ones, actually, quite frankly. So it's good.
I mean, you and me.
I think you froze up there, Adam. So, but don't hang up. Stick with me. Go ahead. You're probably talking. I'm probably talking at the same time, so I'm not sure what people are hearing in this conversation. But we're going to wrap up for the day. I wish everybody a happy Father's Day out there, and we'll see you all next week. And have a great Saturday and weekend.